In this lab, we're going to go over how to do our fake esterification lab. So you can do real esterifications in lab, but they take like, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours to really actually make the reaction work properly. So it's really a lab that has to be monitored for, or an experiment that has to be monitored for a long period of time. So what we did instead is we have fake molecules. So here's our fake molecules, and notice for reaction 1, I have 2 of the same molecules, and there's a reason for that, which is why I'm doing this with you. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut these guys out. And you're gonna tape them on where they're supposed to go. So if you notice, the first one, it's going to go right here because it's the reactants. Now, we're going to tape it down. And there's my reactants. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, you're going to name the reactants. So this is an organic acid plus N, an alcohol, right? So we have an organic acid and an alcohol. You're going to name, you're going to do the name, you're going to do the formula. Where are you going to figure it out? You're going to go to table R for the name, and you're going to go to table R for the condensed formula. So if we take out our reference table, for table R, they tell us the organic acid is called propanoic acid. And the reason it's called propanoic is because it has 1, 2, 3 carbons. So again, the prop tells us that there are 3 carbons in a row, and then the propane tells us 3 carbons in a row, and then they added oic acid. So if it was just 3 carbons, all single bonds, it would be propane, A-N-E ending. They dropped the E, they added oic, they added the acid. This is what makes it an acid. So this guy, well, it's actually the same thing. It's right off table R. Go figure. And then for the alcohol, it would be called, let's find the alcohols. 3 carbons in a row. It would be propane, but they called it 1-propanol. So again, this thing would be propane. They dropped the E, they added OL, and they gave it a number. Now, if you look over here, this is telling you that the R is the carbon, so the functional group is the OH for alcohols, and it can be on any carbon. In other words, the OH takes the place of like an H. So it could be on here, this carbon, this carbon, this carbon. So you are gonna have to number the carbons and then name it. This first one is really off table R, so I did this intentionally so that way you have table R. Now, how do you condense these? You condense them the exact same way they condense them on table R. So like for propanoic, it's there. For propanol, or 1-propanol in this case, I'm just gonna condense it this way. Carbon 1, which is technically this carbon, right, has 2 H's. So it's going to be CH2, and then it gets an OH, and then carbon 2, CH2, and then carbon 3. So there's your carbons, and there's your condensing. So you're just going to use table R as a model and then condense it that way. Now for the products. When we do an esterification, what ends up happening is the H from the acid comes off, the OH from the base comes off, and they form water, and then what's left over, the O, then bonds to the carbon, making an ester. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your molecule, and we're going to literally cut the bonds out and glue them down the way they're supposed to be. So here's my molecule. I'm going to cut carefully my OH off my acid, my H, or my OH off my alcohol and my H off my acid. Then I'm going to take what's left over and I'm going to put them together just like that. And then I'm going to tape these guys down. And this is my ester, all right? And then I can even tape down my, you could do it this way. You can write plus H2O, or if you really wanted to, you could just tape it down there, plus that, because the H and the OH make H2O. So you can do it this way, and then you're gonna name your new molecule, use table R as a guide. In other words, you're gonna follow table R, see how they name it, and then name it the same way, or you're gonna modify the chain lengths to make the same name, or a similar name, I should say. Condense it the exact same way they condense it on table R, and then that's it, the problem's over. And then water's just called water, or you could be fancy and call it dihydrogen monoxide, I don't care. But that's it. So that is reaction 1. You're gonna do 2 more reactions on your own. And again, just be aware, the reason I gave you the sheet with a double set is because one set of the reactants goes in the reactants column. The other set gets cut up to make the products and combine them to make the products. That's why you have 2 sets of each. So one is going to stay exactly the way it is, and then the other is going to get chopped up, rearranged, and taped down into the new compound that you're making.